Hello.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. It's great to see you and happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
I suppose we should have picked something scary today, but we're going in another and better direction. And we're both dressed up in costumes, I guess.
Yes, we're dressed as two podcasters.
Usually not on screen.
Right. Another direction indeed. Our guest today has been known to go in another direction, and in so doing, he's become an inspiration.
Yes, I am so excited. Our guest today is Kyle Scheele, and he has been called the patron saint of crazy ideas, which I love that title.
You know?
I want to be donned that myself. And whether he's having a Viking funeral for the regrets of 21,000 people, hosting the world's first fake marathon, which I cannot wait to talk about that, or gaining a quarter of a billion
Million.
quarter of a billion million views over all the times on his videos, getting over a million TikTok followers in 25 hours. It's really insane. Kyle is always on the lookout for crazy ideas that produce wildly outsized outcomes. And more than anything, Kyle hopes that his story can inspire others to chase their own crazy ideas and become the people they were meant to be.
I love that. But before we bring him out, we want to give you an idea of what one of his crazy ideas actually look like. And I think probably the best way to do that is to show you this short video from TikTok. Watch and enjoy.
And then I posted my third video. And the third video was about this picture. This is my family. This is from 35 years ago. So the photographer, from motivation that I can only describe as pure spite, asked my dad to tilt his head at like a 45-degree angle. It took a little bit of time, but I painstakingly went through and I fixed my dad's head. Pretty nice, huh? And I was looking at it and I thought, I think it's still missing something though. You know what would be funnier? So I posted this picture to my 17 followers. And then I took a walk. I looked down about halfway through the walk and I go, whoa, I have 100 followers. That's crazy. And then I came back from the walk and I'm packing up my office and heading home for the day. And I have 1,000 followers. And I get home and I have 3,000 followers. And Andy's like, dude, this is crazy. You're going to hit 10,000 followers by midnight. And he was close. At midnight, I had 500,000 followers. And a day later, I had 1 million. I went from 17 followers to 1 million followers in just over 25 hours. TikTok on the back end will show you how much cumulative watch time has been spent watching a video, and it's an entire human life. It's like 70 years of time. We could have cured cancer, but we watched my stupid video, so that's on me. That's my bad. That one idea has opened up so many doors for me. I probably wouldn't be here today if it weren't for that video, and I almost didn't post it.
He is amazing. And I'm so excited for us to bring him on stage now. So please welcome Kyle Scheele. Kyle, it's so great to have you.
It's great to be here.
We're glad you posted that video because otherwise you wouldn't be here probably.
I know, man, that it's insane. I talk about that on stage that I almost didn't post it because I almost didn't post any of the videos. I had, for like a year during the pandemic, I had watched my entire speaking business collapse because there was no more public to do public speaking to. And I was just kind of scrolling on TikTok a lot and I would send videos to my friends. And I had this one friend that would always tell me like, Kyle, you should post TikToks. And I came up with all these reasons why it wasn't the right time or I'd missed the perfect window. And finally, like a year in, I realized I was just making excuses. So I decided to do it. And I posted one video and nothing really happened. I posted another video and nothing really happened. And then that video that that story was about, that was my third TikTok video. And I had 17 followers at the time. And a day later, I had 1 million. And it, completely changed the course of a lot of different things in my life and opened up all sorts of cool doors. And I'm super grateful that I did post it.
We are too. Is that when you realized the power of having a crazy idea, or did it come before or after?
I think it's a thing I'm always relearning. One of the things that I talk about is that chasing ideas always teaches you something. And often the lesson that I have to learn over and over again is that I'm not a very good judge of what is possible for me or for anyone else. Like I will always go into something thinking, you know what, best case scenario will land here and worst case scenario will land here. And then we almost never land in the window of possibility that I envisioned. And so I started chasing crazy ideas 20 plus years ago when I was a high school kid selling t-shirts out of the trunk of my car. And then like a year after that, I had t-shirts in Urban Outfitters stores all over the country. And so just over and over again, I've learned that when you chase a crazy idea, like that's a great way to lead to wildly outsized outcomes.
Yeah.
Amazing. I have heard you say what a problem needs is a solution, but before it becomes a solution, it's a crazy idea. And I really resonate with that from even the company we've started with my co-founder, Mackenzie, and I. It felt like a crazy idea to the industry itself, but then to everyone else. So I love what you're saying about you even experienced that as a kid, like your entrepreneurial self of why not just do something to start and see where it goes. That's really amazing.
Yeah, I think that, there's this idea out there, I can't remember who said it, but if it wasn't a crazy idea, somebody probably already would have tried it. And so I think everything, there's a Peter Diamandis quote where he says, the day before something is a breakthrough, it's a crazy idea. And so I think that we have to develop in ourselves the habit of trying things and saying, hey, you know what, this seems crazy, but maybe I'm just limiting myself, and maybe I've already decided it's not going to work based on information that's not actually true. Maybe I'm scared, maybe I'm nervous, maybe I just don't have, but I think sometimes all we have to do is go, you know what, why not? Let's give it a shot and see what happens, because we don't usually know what actually is or is not possible.
Mm-hmm. Right. I've heard you say that constraints are the breeding ground for creativity. And you give the example, we've all said it. It's like, if only I had blank, then I could do blank. And my example of that, I was thinking about this. I spent a chunk of my career in a production company producing corporate events. And I can remember at the beginning of that process, all the execs are in the office and then they go away. So we get all that information and then we're left sitting around a big giant table with a big blank whiteboard. It was awful. And then someone would march in with the list of limitations, which were an executive speech and a boring financial report and an award show and whatever. And we'd throw those up on the whiteboard and it's like, okay, now we can get to work like connecting the dots and designing and creating something that makes sense and that is successful and engaging. And I always remember that when I get really stuck, because, it's like you're looking at that impossible thing or that blank slate. And it's like, what do I know for sure? Or what do I think is challenging? Whatever, just throw something on the board and add to it.
Constraints are a vital part of the creative process. I think that there's this thing that we say about creative people a lot. And I've had people say this about me lots of times, and people mean well when they say it, but they'll say, oh, Kyle, he's an outside the box thinker. Or they'll say, oh, that person really thinks outside the box. And I have a whole talk about, it's called thinking inside the box, because actually it doesn't take any creativity to think outside the box. Thinking outside the box is when your boss says, hey, we need to get this done in the next 6 weeks. And you go, what if we got it done in the next 6 months, right? That's pretty outside the box. Or what if we didn't do it at all and you just kept paying me? Like it's easy to go, what if I had no constraints at all and I could do anything that I ever wanted? That doesn't actually require creativity. Creativity it's in the gap between what you think that you need and what you have. And you're like, well, I wish I could get this done if I had more budget, if I had a bigger team, if I had more time, whatever it is. But you don't have those things. And so in order to get it done with what you have, you're going to have to get pretty creative.
We just had a question come in that is similar, but someone was specifically asking, Kyle, how do you deal with the naysayers, the people who are so used to the status quo, if you have a job where people are not in the habit of innovating?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're always going to have that. I think trying to ask yourself, is there anything beneficial about what they're saying? Is there anything true? Sometimes you do need the tension of a wild dreamer and then someone to kind of bring reality into it. If that person's job is to say, okay, yeah, but we do have this budget, where we do have this time, and we do have that, then maybe it's reframing them as maybe they're not a naysayer, maybe they are just a part of the creative process. But there's also a time when you have to say, maybe I need to separate myself from that person for a minute and And, every organization has a devil's advocate, as some self-appointed devil's advocate usually, who has decided it's their job to tell you all the reasons why something won't work. And one of the things that I say is that in the beginning, we need that person to go somewhere else. We need to create a safe place where ideas have a chance and where they're sort of bodyguarded. Because I think that ideas are a really powerful thing. Like one single fully developed idea can totally flip the world on its head. One idea like democracy or AI or I mean, there are these individual ideas that just come along and flip the course of history. But that's only once the idea is like developed enough to know what it is. At the beginning, an idea is a really fragile thing. And I would imagine that every person watching this has had an idea that you were so proud of and you're so excited about it. And then you showed it to somebody and they laughed or they scoffed or whatever. And then all of a sudden you're like, where did it go? It's gone. And that's because a really young baby idea is so fragile and you can't expose it to that criticism until it knows what it is a little bit. So I think you have to figure out, where are you at in the creative process? And if you know, hey, you know what, I have people in my life I don't show new ideas to. I don't tell them because I know that their first response is going to be negative. So I have to guard that idea myself. And then I have other people I go, you know what, they are going to be negative, but they're also probably going to be right. And so once I feel like I'm committed enough to the idea and it's strong enough to stand on its own, then I will go and show it to that person and go, okay, show me where all the flaws are in this. Tell me what I'm not seeing here. And then I'm seeing them as a partner in how do we make this idea stronger. They might not think that. They might think, no, I'm going to tell them why it sucks. And I might go into it going, yeah, but I'm going to use what you tell me to make the idea better.
That's good advice.
So well said. And I am a natural optimist. I'm always trying to find the crazy idea or the opportunity. And I've had to also reframe people that maybe I would have originally thought, oh, maybe that's a pessimist. I try to reframe them as maybe they're actually just a realist. Like maybe I'm the one that needs to be brought down to earth a little bit. Once that idea has been formulated, I love how you said bodyguarded. That makes so much sense.
And I think ideas, I mean, I'm lucky that I get to be the fun, exciting, cool ideas guy. But the truth is, like, I'm the gas, and a car needs brakes too. Like you need at some point for someone to bring reality into the situation and for them to say, okay, that is a great idea. We only have 1/3 of the budget that what you just suggested would cost, or we don't have that kind of timeline. And so I think you need all different types of people. And really, oftentimes what you find is that it's just a matter of a different perspective, that person is coming at it from a different perspective than you are. And it's not that either one of you is right or wrong. It's that you're looking at different angles of this, and they might have some really valid points, and you might have some really valid points. And again, the constraint is, how do we make something work that both of us will look at and go, yeah, that'll work.
And then there's the Apollo 13 example.
Yeah, I love that example. So in Apollo 13, one of the things that I talk about is when that all started going wrong and when we figured out, hey, we have a very dangerous and very time-sensitive situation on our hands. We have astronauts up there. They're flying in a damaged craft. We need to figure out what to do. One of the first things that NASA did was go, well, what do they have? Like what equipment is not damaged up there? What is working? What isn't working? And then what's the overall list of everything that they have access to on that spacecraft? Because any solution that we give them has to use that. Because if we say, okay, what you need to do is get a 10mm socket, and they're like, we don't have that. Right? Where are we going to get that? We're in space. And so NASA put together this list of here's all the stuff that they had. And then they locked scientists in rooms and said, figure it out. You can come out when you're done figuring this problem out. And the constraints were, it wasn't just, okay, here's the stuff that we know that they have. It was also, how could we use these things in unconventional ways? And one of the things that they ended up using was like the cardstock from the flight manual cover. Nobody would have put that on a list of tools, but they did put it on a list of here's what they have. And someone thought, okay, well, what else can we use that for? So working within the constraints of what they had, they were still able to go, okay, well, this is normally just used as a cover for this book. How could we use it to adapt a round filter to a square tube? And they made that work, and that cardstock ended up being a part of the final solution.
That is an amazing example. And I often think about the phrase limitations are liberating. And by being forced in this scenario, like you're saying, those constraints, they were able to find a new solution they never would have found before. That's really good.
Absolutely.
It's just, all of this is fascinating to me. I feel like you're helping explain a part of me I never understood before. We'll talk about that another time.
Yes.
Okay. I want to touch on another subject if we can, just for a minute. One of our goals, as I have explained to you, Kyle, for this Behind the Mic series is that we like to show our listeners that stuff that you don't really necessarily get on the promo video or in the website bio, that kind of thing. It's what we typically learn about a speaker once we've worked with them. And I always think that's the good stuff. And I can't wait to book them the next time and share that with the next client, or find a way to use that thing I learned in a very specific way, because that's often the stuff that makes that event, it's so engaging for a specific audience. I've learned two things about you and that I didn't know before I worked together. And they're probably, one of them's at least going to embarrass you, I'm sure. But I learned that you can go up against any innovation and creativity speaker and knock it out of the park. And what I mean by that is, although it occurred to me that you would be in that category, there are a lot of people in that category that are science driven and, all kinds of letters behind their name and, whatever, however you explain those people, they're brilliant. And I'm like, yeah. And so is Kyle. And often those same audiences respond to you, in, at least in my experience, even better, because you're so surprising to them and you make them think in different ways. And that, I'm just grateful for you, dude.
Yeah.
Also, the second one is that you're a man with a very big heart. And I've learned this from working with you, but I've also learned it just recently from learning about a program that you do that I did not know about. The title is It Only Takes One. I have to read it because I haven't memorized it yet. Rediscovering the Power of Individuals to Drive Meaningful Change. And I've asked Kyle if he would share a little bit about this, because it landed on me really powerfully. I have a little granddaughter and I watch, what she deals with. Schools are brutal. Kids can be brutal. Yeah. And I read this and it just meant a lot and reminded me of, well, I'll let you tell them so they know what it reminded me of.
Yeah. So that talk actually came from, before I was a corporate speaker, I spent 12 years as a youth speaker. So I traveled all around the country talking to high school students and elementary and middle school and college kids. And most of what I talked about was the power of one person to make a difference. I think that when you are a kid in a school, you often feel like you're powerless and you're like, well, you're told where to go and what time you have to be there. And especially for the first half or more of your schooling, you don't get to pick what classes you're in or what teachers you have. And you think, oh, I'm kind of powerless here. But when I look back on my time growing up, almost all of the things that made the biggest impact on me were when one person really just noticed me and cared. The early part of my life, I went to this little tiny school where there were like 20 kids in my class. It was a private school. And I didn't really fit in there. And I was bouncing off the walls. I had tons of energy, probably undiagnosed ADHD. And this was like, it's a private school. It's very like buttoned up. Yes, ma'am. No, sir. And all I really wanted was to have like one friend. Like I just wanted one, like, ride or die buddy. And I just didn't have that. And I remember I tried so hard. I would have kids come over to my house and spend the night. And we live in the woods. And so like we'd go running through the forest and building forts out of sticks and trying to talk to squirrels and stuff. And it seemed like they were having a good time, but then they wouldn't have me over to their house. And like, I noticed this cycle kept repeating itself. So finally, it was probably like second grade. I remember I cornered this kid on the playground. I was like, hey man, what's going on? Like, I've had you over a lot of times and you've had me over approximately 0 times. Like, why is that? And he was like, oh, I can't have you over. My mom says that you're dangerous. And like, I had this reputation of like, he's got so much energy and he's probably a little extra and too much. And so parents were like, don't have that kid over my house. And as a parent, I get it. Like some kids are just like bouncing off the walls, but as a kid, man, that just like ripped my heart out. And I just felt like, man, I started feeling like maybe I don't fit in at this school. And then I started feeling like maybe I don't fit in anywhere. And I was in like second grade the first time I thought about ending my life. And I was in third grade thinking about that. And then fourth grade came And in 4th grade, this new kid showed up, and his name was Zach. Actually, his name is still Zach. He never changed it. And Zach, like the day that he showed up, my whole life changed, because I was like, that's the guy. That's who I've been waiting for. Like, Zach was like me, and he was witty and sarcastic, and also did not have a filter between his brain and his mouth. So whatever came into here was going to come out of there. That meant that Zach and I got to spend a lot of time together, mostly in the hallways. And so it'd be Kyle, Zach, get out of class. And we just became like inseparable friends. And I'll tell that story on stage and talk about how, leading up to that, I thought part of why I was so, like despairing and suicidal was because I thought my life is never going to get any better, because I thought of all the things that would have to change before my life got better. All these kids are going to have to leave and be replaced with kids who really click with me. And all these teachers are going to have to leave and be replaced with teachers who really love it when a kid is a giant distraction. And I had never heard of a school rebuilding itself around the most obnoxious student. And then I realized when Zach came, I was like, oh, actually, all that wasn't true. I didn't need all that. I just needed one person. And so I kind of in that talk go through like the power of one person. It only takes one person to make you feel like you belong. And that's what Zach kind of showed me, is that like it only takes one person to make you feel like you are welcome here and you have a place in this world. I don't need everyone to like me, but if one person connects with me, and I'm like, okay, I'm all right. On the flip side, it also only takes one person to make you feel like you don't belong. It only takes one person to just, if that person has decided, I don't like you and I'm going to let you know that, man, that's powerful. That hurts. And that's the weight that you have to carry around. It only takes one person to make someone's day or ruin someone's day. And so I used to give that talk in the youth world. And then one day somebody said, hey, would you come give that to a corporate audience? And I was like, I can. I don't know if it'll work. And they were like, no. They had all this confidence that I didn't really have. And I went, and people were like in tears. And I realized, like, you know what? We're all just school kids that grew up a little bit, but inside we're still hoping for the same thing, which is I just want a friend. I want a connection. Right. I want to feel like I belong here. And wherever you're at in the corporate hierarchy, if you just started yesterday, or if you're the CEO or whatever, you have the power. You might not have the power to decide the budgets or the timelines or what projects you're working on or any of that. You do have the power to make the people around you feel like they belong and to make them feel like they matter. And oftentimes that's so much more powerful than whatever the title on your desk says, or whatever your business card, or whatever your salary is. And so that whole talk is really just designed to remind people, like, hey, you are powerful, and you have the power to change another person's day, which often is all it takes to change another person's life.
Right. That's powerful stuff, boy. Well, so is Zach still your friend?
Yeah, Zach and I, we went to middle school together, and then in high school, we went to separate high schools because we lived in different school districts. But we've stayed in touch over the years. I mean, he was like my best friend in 8th grade, and now I'm 38, so we're not as close as we used to be. But he's still a phenomenal guy. And in fact, a couple years ago, I was speaking at an event and partway in my hometown. And partway through, I noticed that Zach's dad was in the back of the room. And I wasn't giving this talk at all. I wasn't planning on talking about Zach at all. And I just like got choked up. And in the middle of my talk, I was like, I'm sorry, guys. I was like, this is not scripted. I just got to say, like, that guy saved my life. And I talked about how Zach's family, like one of the things, it wasn't just Zach, his whole family made me feel welcome. And the first time I went to his house, they were like, hey, make yourself at home. Here's the fridge. Here's the pantry. Don't even ask. Like, whatever you need, just pretend that you live here. And so that was a really cool moment where I got to reconnect with, because I hadn't seen his dad in probably a decade and a half, 2 decades, something like that. And so we took a picture together and sent it to Zach. And so, yeah.
I'm guessing he shed a few tears in that moment.
He did. Yeah. It was very, very cool. And I think about that because I gave this talk for a long time before I ever told Zach how much his friendship had meant to me. And finally I was like sharing this like on a really big stage, and I was like, I should probably tell Zach, like, hey man, just so you know, you kind of saved my life. And he actually came back and said, what you don't know is that like I really needed that friendship too at that time. And that's something I think that we often don't realize is like that human connection goes both ways, and oftentimes helping another person ends up helping you out as well.
Right. Well, who knew? You're a belonging speaker.
Yes.
Which, by the way, don't stop giving that talk. That's a powerful thing.
I was going to say, I mean, now more than ever, I think people individually need to feel that connection and know the power they can make, but the power that can happen in that connection. And then also in a team setting, I totally get why someone came to you asking first for that to move to corporate. And I'm sorry, we had another question come in that I love so much. And so it's going back a little bit, but I would love to hear your thoughts on it before we move on. A question that came in was regarding the Apollo 13 reference. They said, if you could build your perfect team for executing a crazy idea, who is on it? And they said for that Apollo 13 reference, like they probably needed people on the team with diversity of thought. So that's where the question was coming from.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think it depends on what the crazy idea is. I'm always looking for kind of a mixture of like domain expertise. Like I definitely don't want to put just people like me in a room to save the astronauts, but I think you might need one or two. And then you need people who go, well, how does this equipment work? And what is the goal? And what, people who can do the complex math to whoever figured out, oh, it's actually, because the Apollo 13 astronauts were orbiting the Earth. And we figured out it's better to send them around the moon and come back than to try to get them out of orbit here. Somebody needs to be able to do that math, and that's not me. So I think you need a balance of domain expertise, but then also some people who are outside of that. And you probably do need one or two devil's advocates in a group that's going to get stuff done. You need that person who's going to say, okay, let's pull it back in. And you need some crazy dreamers. I think it really depends on the specifics of that idea. One thing that I will say, though, is that oftentimes a team it's not just who's in the room in that moment. It's also all of the connections that all of those people have made leading up to that moment. I'm a big fan of, like, when I have an idea, I'll shoot a text to somebody, and depending on what the idea is and whose input I want, and I'll ask a bunch of different people, hey, what would you think about this? Or how would you do this? And then when I'm in the meeting actually doing the thing, then I'm bringing all of that with me. And so it's sort of like this like board of advisors that lives in my head and on my phone that I don't have to convene all those people in one place at one time, but it's constantly seeking out information and advice and feedback. And then I also think that some of the people on a perfect team are going to be people that you've never met before and that you'll never actually interact with. And that's why I'm such a big fan of, like, you should read widely. You should watch a bunch of weird documentaries. You should expose yourself to the greatest number of other people's ideas and thought patterns so that you bring all of that with you into the work.
Brilliant.
Awesome question and great answer.
Some great questions.
So, I hate to wrap it up, but I guess we're going to have to. Because I have all these questions. Yeah. I'm always amazed that authentic, true stories are what move us the most. And you just gave us an example of that with your story about when you were in grade school. And I appreciate how attainable you've made your messages, how simple you've made them, yet profound, which is everybody's favorite thing. I appreciate your authenticity and your willingness to be vulnerable. And I thank you so much for taking the time with us. I thought of one thing I forgot to say earlier, Channing, so excuse me before you say some of your closing remarks. But with your first video, that went viral. It just hits me that it's like lightning in a bottle, making a video go viral. Well, not that you made it, but you made the video and it went viral. And I mean, some people can do that once, and maybe there's somebody out there that can do it twice, but you do it repeatedly. I mean, I think you might have kind of answered how, I'm not sure, but I feel like I want to have you back and just talk about that. Like, it's crazy.
I will also say, though, that some of that is just like, it's kind of compounding success. Once you do something once, it's easier to do it again. And a lot of it's quantity over quality, or quantity over, not necessarily over quality, but just over being able to pick. I can't pick a specific video that's going to go viral. I've tried before. I've made videos and go, this is going to be the one. What I can do is go, I know that if I put out 100 videos, something in there is going to go viral. And I think there's a lesson there of, like, creativity isn't always about putting all your eggs in one basket. And it's about, I'm going to just have a lot of at-bats. I know that if I keep doing this and I keep making stuff and keep putting things out into the world, overall the quality is going to get better. And then eventually one of those things is going to take off.
We really do want you to keep pulling stuff out of that brain of yours, please.
Yeah. And it's so funny because what I wanted to end on was, one of your crazy ideas of, well, I'm running a real marathon, and right now I'm training for one that I'm going to run in a month, and I wish I had gone to yours. And so we're going to close out with showing a fun video of one of Kyle's amazingly crazy ideas. But Kyle, before we go to this video, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciated you being on and sharing just all of your incredibleness with us.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be on, and I appreciate and love both of you guys and love working with you.
Thank you. And could you kind of tee up what you were going for here, and then we'll show everybody and let them enjoy the rest of their day.
Yeah, so this video or this idea came, I have a friend who is a marathon runner, and I don't know if you are like this, Channing, but a lot of marathon runners tend to be pretty evangelistic about their hobby and get other people in. And so anytime I would have lunch with this guy, he was always like, dude, you got to run a marathon. You got to run a marathon. And one of the things that he said, oh, it's just so cool to be able to say that you've done that, to be able to say that you've run a marathon. That's really cool. And I said, okay, you've convinced me. I'm going to say that I've run a marathon. And he was like, no, that's not what I meant. And so I started kind of like, what if I just said that I've run a marathon, and could I convince other people that I've done that? And I realized, well, you probably need a bunch of people to all say that we've done it so that we all make up this fake marathon and we take pictures of ourselves pretending to run and post it online. And that was kind of the spark of this idea. And it just started as a silly thing. And then by the end of it, we ended up having 1,000 people in 24 different countries sign up for it. And we were in Runner's World magazine. It was sponsored by Groupon. And then we did a second one during the pandemic, and 34,000 people signed up, and the Washington Post wrote about it. And it was really cool. And it was, again, one of those things where my idea for what it would be was so much smaller than what it ended up becoming. And even though it started as a really silly thing, it actually ended up like there was a lot of really meaningful stuff that came out of that day.
Yes.
Well, that'd be fun to talk about sometime.
It built so much community, and it only takes one, like in a really maybe dark time for people. So excited to be working with you. Thank you, Kyle, for joining, and we'll end it with this.
Awesome.
I will never forget, thanks to 34,477 TikTokers who pretended to run a marathon that didn't actually exist. Here's how it happened. Back in 2013, I had this friend who was always bragging about running marathons. So just to mess with him, I made up a fake marathon with a bunch of my friends, and we ended up in Runner's World magazine. Then a few weeks ago, I posted a TikTok about it, and 34,477 of you were like, let's do that again. We printed out fake running bibs, pretended to stretch out, and took pictures and video of ourselves pretending to run.
You can do it, Greta! You're almost done!
I know the internet can be a cesspool of negativity sometimes, but it's stuff like this that reminds me of how great it can be too. Yesterday was this incredibly fun day of watching people all over the world take this silly spark of an idea and bring it to life with their own unbridled creativity and joy. You guys made fake aid stations and even set up fake medical stops, which was good because there turned out to be a lot of fake injuries. You even simulated multiple fake finish lines. It was magnificent. I was a big fan of TikTok already, but yesterday was proof of what can happen when we use this platform for maximum chaotic good. So if that sounds like something you're into, hit that follow button because we are just getting started.
That is so amazing.
Amazing.
I love the sponsored by Groupon.
Yes, exactly. And in Runner's World magazine.
Yeah, I mean, you can't get more legit than that. So in hindsight, I wish I had just signed up for Kyle's.
Me too.
Well, it's been so great as always, Kris. I'm really glad that we got to talk with Kyle today, and we're excited for the next one. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So I didn't really prepare for this, but I don't think I have to because Daryl Davis is a favorite of mine. And you can read up on him before he comes on. What's the date, Channing? The 14th of November. Yes. And at 11:30 this time instead of 12 because Daryl has another engagement. But Daryl is a really special human being. I'm going to wait to save a lot of the detail for the day, but let me just tell you this. He is such an amazing communicator, I guess is what I'm trying to say, that he literally listened to Ku Klux Klan leaders as a Black man and brought them out of the Klan. He owns several of their robes and those weird hats they wear. We thought it would be interesting to bring him on during the month of November, given we all need to figure out how to talk to each other and have conversation and understand each other better. And Daryl came to mind as somebody who could really help us do that. So that's going to be truly special behind the mic.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, Kris. And we will talk then.
Talk to you soon.